Welcome to Erudite, a panel discussion on contemporary issues of higher education being hosted by the AP State Council of Higher Education. Today's topic for the Erudite panel discussion is student engagement. We have with us three panel speakers, Dr. Parth J. Shah, founder and president, Center for Civil Society, Professor K. Rama Mohan Rao, Vice Chairman, AP State Council of Higher Education, and Professor V. Srikanth Reddy, Rector, Sri Venkateswara University. Today's topic being a topic of contemporary issue. Student engagement has been a neglected subject. The teacher and the taught are in a learning situation where they are resorting to the generic learning strategies. Chalk and talk by the teacher and rote learning by the taught. With the pandemic in place, the teachers have been facing the problem of student engagement in the online learning scenario, and thus the felt need of student engagement both in offline as well as in online classroom interactions has got its own importance. Student engagement is about connecting the class and the teacher so much that a student is willing to blast through hurdles to learn more. What's the best way to connect to students? Ensure learning is meaningful. With this background, now we have the panel discussion on the student engagement. We have with us Professor Parth J. Shah, the founder president of the Center for Civil Society, and Center for Civil Society advances social change through public policy. Dr. Shah works in education, livelihood and policy training to promote choice and accountability across the private and public sectors. Parth J. Shah's research and advocacy work focuses on the themes of economic freedom, includes law, liberty and livelihood campaign, choice and competition in education to fund students, not schools, property rights approach for the environment, so that there is terracotta vision of stewardship and good governance. Dr. Parth taught economics at the University of Michigan in Dearborn for 7 years before returning to India, and he is now advocating for the call Second Freedom Movement for economic, social and political independence. He arrived at the conclusion that the statist model of governance was a reason for India's lack of development and decided to provide an alternative view through the Center for Civil Society. And we have with us Professor K. Rama Mohan Rao, the Vice Chairman of AP State Council of Higher Education, the former professor in management with more than 30 years of teaching experience, and equally competent administrator as he was a former registrar of Andhra University. And Professor Rao is known for his quality assurance and quality enhancement strategies, and he had been advocating quality enhancement and empowerment of all higher education institutions in quality parameters. And we also have Professor V. Srikanth Reddy, professor in psychology with lots of years of experience in the psychology of students and also giving his own type of necessities for a better world. And right now Professor Srikanth Reddy is the rector of Sri Venkateswara University. So now let us start the panel discussion, and now may I invite Dr. Parth J. Shah to give his remarks on this topic, like the student engagement, what strategies should faculty and institution evolve for effective student management, and what are the best student engagement practices around the world. So over to you, Dr. Parth J. Shah.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really a great pleasure to join you in this very important conversation on the issue of student engagement. I think, as you pointed out, the pandemic has made it very clear that student engagement is going to be a very important parameter for the success of colleges and universities, I think, as well as schools, I think, in India and around the world. Now, I think before we start, we should ask ourselves a question. Why is it important to engage with students? What does a college has to gain by investing its resources, time, to find ways, to design ways, to implement those ways, to improve engagement with students while they are on the campus, as well as, of course, when they are off campus after the graduation. So what's in it for the college? So that would decide how much effort people would put into this particular area. I think one answer that I have, and I'm sure we will discuss that as we proceed in the panel discussion, is that look at the answer to that is $60 billion. What do we gain by having better student engagement? $60 billion and probably world-class rank on the top 3 or top 5. Now, how do I get the number $60 billion? Well, that's the size of the endowment of Harvard University, right? Given money that is given by their alumni. So you can see if you engage well with students, and I'll talk briefly about what they have been doing, right? Then you could be what Harvard has been. Right? And people don't realize that much of the success of Harvard University almost since its founding has been largely because of the role that the students play in the governance, not just while they are student learning on the campus, when the overall governance of the university. Right? They actually are consulted even in appointment of the president of the university. From that point of view, their vote has equal validity or weight as the other members of the board. So I think I want to give you a sort of a picture, like what's possible. Reputation of Harvard and the endowment of Harvard, right? If you're able to figure out and actually genuinely, with the full heart and mind, implement the ideas of better student engagement. Now, there are many ways to think about where do we involve students, how do you involve students, right? But what Harvard has done is created a board of overseers, which has about 30 students as members who are elected by the student body. So student body, the alumni of the university, actually vote and elect 30 members, right, who then become the board of overseers. And they are the ones who supervise, monitor, assess performance of all the departments and faculties on the campus. So the Board of Overseers is, in a sense, parallel body, governance body, along with the Board of sort of trustees or fellows, as they call it at Harvard. So students have a lot of governance role. And I think it's important for us to think about not just how to give them better education in the classroom. Of course, that's important. I think even more important is how to give them a role in the governance of the university while they are at the campus, while they are a student, and obviously, and more importantly, when after they graduate. Right? I think we know the stories of IIM and IITs, right? What the alumni of those institutions have given back to their alma mater. Right? So there is billions of dollars of funds which have flown into these institutions in India from the alumni of these colleges. So it's not something unusual about US, right? What is happening in the Harvard is also very much doable within India. And some of our illustrious colleges and universities have been doing it. So I think providing a role in governance has two important values. One, obviously, giving them a stake in the university itself. And second, and most importantly, train our students in the ethos of democratic governance, which I think is a much larger purpose beyond the campus, beyond the benefits to the university. Right? Is an ethos which actually, as you can see, not just in India, but around the world, is under threat. Right? How do we engage politely but forcefully, express our points of view, debate, discuss, but then accept what comes out at the end of the process, and then join hands and move forward. Right? That kind of engagement, that kind of training in democratic processes, in democratic give and take, right, is an important part of a training that university must provide. There's no other place they're going to get it. And I think involving students in governance is very useful, I think also very productive way of providing that training. So my broad message is that there's a lot to gain for the university, for the faculty, and for the team if we engage with students in an effective manner, involve them not just in terms of how they can be better students, but also in the governance of the university.
Now, may I ask Professor K. Rama Rao garu to highlight on the strategies that the faculty and institution should evolve for effective student engagement.
So, the theme identified today is highly relevant to the present times. As mentioned already, we had a very different experience of student engagement during the pandemic. We have a culturally promoted educational system over centuries, and we had one system of engaging students in the institutions. When we talk about student engagement, primarily to my mind, two institutions that should take the responsibility. One is the educational institution, where the student spends the prime active time with the institution, and the second greater institution is the family, wherein the student spends larger time. Of course, there will be other areas like friends, society, neighborhood. They split in small amounts of time, but these two institutions basically should take the responsibility of engaging students in the right perspective. When we are trying to engage students effectively in the right perspective, we should have some clarity about what should be the institutional responsibilities to see that students are engaged in the right perspective. So, there it comes, the prime area is creating learning experiences which motivates the students, which makes the student perceive that they are gaining value, and value that can be used for the future, and the competencies that are required to build a career in the changing times. Now, of course, we are in the 21st century, and we are also trying to create an awareness that the phase is education 4.0, and we have a different kind of challenges the students should acquire competencies to face with. So, that is one area where student engagement, in fact, in the institutions traditionally larger part of the student time is being used in classroom teaching and learning and so on and so forth. The another aspect is how we can make the student time utilized more productively by making the technology intervene into it, by providing right kind of infrastructural facilities, and also the right kind of methodologies of learning. Through that also we have to understand how we have to design the time utilization of the student in a systematic way. The another objective what I understand is the institutions should focus on holistic development of the student by giving focus on life skills, behavior shaping, and also as rightly mentioned by Shah, the values and ethics. So, this should be part of the design of the student time engagement. And another aspect is developing social sensibility and value perceptions, how we have to perceive value of the situations. So, we should not make the student perceive negative values from the situations. We should train them in such a way that they should perceive positive values from the situations, so that they will be stress free and they can have a matured understanding of analyzing things. Then ultimately we should make the student understand himself and visualize himself or herself as a global citizen, and wherein we need to provide an opportunity to learn effective communication skills, cross cultural issues, and we should expose them to the cross cultural issues, and also we should provide an opportunity to develop the sensibility towards international developments. So, the global environmental exposure, the regional and national environmental exposure, the societal dimensions exposure, and the knowledge and wisdom factors, besides developing a personality where they can design and develop a system which makes them happy and also the people who are connected with them happy. So, towards that end, what an institution has to do, what kind of strategic plan they can develop. So, there must be a strategy wherein classroom teaching and learning process should be dynamically changed. So, we cannot say catch hold of the conventional method of teaching and learning. We should introduce new ways of teaching and learning, because the accessibility of information resource is widely available to the students, and then we have to understand the maturity levels of the students, and accordingly we should design the classroom teaching and learning process. So, wherein as rightly mentioned by Shah, in advanced countries people have different methodologies where students are more self dependent in learning rather than looking at the teachers and faculty and other issues. So, that kind of methodology unfortunately is limited to only a few institutions in the country, but a greater part of the institutions they have not adopted advanced methods of teaching and learning process, wherein the experiential learning is not very much practiced, participative learning is also not significantly present, and we have to find out new ways of making student confident to go for self learning approach, peer group learning, learning through observations, learning through interaction with experienced personalities and professionals and subject experts in various dimensions and disciplines. And we should provide such systems and infrastructure wherein the students can test themselves, evaluate themselves, and learn what are the program outcomes they could achieve, and what skills they have, and what skills they can communicate and impress the market that they can do, they can perform. So, this kind of environment, this kind of design of the system, this kind of execution of the system through effective governance is very, very important, wherein counseling is a important aspect of making the student learn themselves, understand themselves, their strengths, their gaps, and also to develop strategies to go forward. And in this process, the serious gap what I could identify is the teacher training. The teachers conventionally in all institutions except a few islands of excellence, they are tuned to conventional method of teaching and learning process, and over the years the disconnect between the teachers and students emotionally is happening. So, this is making a lot of problem in mentally connecting the student with the system, emotional connectivity with the system. And then when the emotional connectivity with learning is missing, the student is diverted to focus on examination orientation. So, pass makes everything like. So, that is unfortunately the situation present now, and we have to shift from that kind of situation to a real learning experience, knowledge gaining, wisdom to apply the knowledge. To that extent we have to drive them and we have to engage them. So, teacher plays a very important role in this, and we should have right kind of teaching methodologies trained by to the teachers, and also the way in which they should engage students in the classroom, outside the classroom, and also when student is out of the institution, that is learning beyond classroom, learning beyond educational institution. So, the student teacher connectivity, student institution connectivity is now possible because of the technological interventions. So, the activities need to be scheduled where student engagement in association with students. So, it is not that a design that we do and make the students get part of it. We have to discuss with the student, because there is a lot of generational change, generational understanding between the teacher and student, between the institution and the students. So, continuously we have to engage discussions with the students to develop a plan or a strategy how we can effectively engage them. And here we have to remember that there is diversity in student needs. Not all students are alike, not all students have equal competencies, and not all students have equal aspirations. So, the institution should identify this area and take the responsibility of identifying the diverse needs of the students and develop an engagement plan accordingly. Then only you can make the students effectively engaged. And whenever you are designing a program, designing an activity, you should see that every student should have a chance to participate, and also we should make a system that every student try and test himself or herself in every activity of engagement that you design and propose it. With this kind of thing I stop here, and thank you very much.
Now, may I invite Professor V. Srikanth Reddy sir to share his thoughts on effective student engagement.
Good evening everybody, and I am happy to be associated with a conversation regarding how to engage a student in the classroom, or how to make his learning more effective and meaningful to the society and to him in particular and in general to the society. And this engagement of a student, actually I believe that has a different meaning depending upon the various things. One may be regarding the goals which the individual and the institution tries to set up, or it may be related to the course preparation, or it may be related to the delivery process. So it all has different meaning. For example, if we talk about a goal, we talks about whether to understand the course, or whether to motivate the student, or whether to know whether he is intricately motivated or extrinsically motivated to learn the course. So we can think about what to be engaged. There are many ways, because being a psychologist, I try to look at it in a different manner and try to see, because we can't engage them without. So it all depends upon whether we want to know how to engage him in the room, whether immediate concern of preparing him to learn, understand what the teacher says. So here the engagement varies from our what we are trying to address upon it. But anyway, keeping all those terms, we can always say that we all recognize and we know that it is very important to see that the student is engaged well in the classroom. And we psychologists and educational psychologists have been proposing number of ways to talk about how we can actively engage a student in the classroom. And there are many, and Professor Rama, Professor Shah have been mentioning them, because especially some of the unique and new ways of trying to engage a student in the classroom. But for me, here, basically, when you talk about in a classroom context, when you want to really engage a student, we need to implement a type of teaching which will mix the content and activity. So activity-based learning would make a student engage himself relatively better than just lecturing mode, or where only a monologue will be there. So normally monologues will be like a lullaby, and dialogue would be always where both teacher and the taught are interacting. It will make life, and he will be attending upon it. Because when I saw that what to be talked, I was talking to, they were talking to how difficult for teachers to make learning joyful. This was something which I read from what I should have taught. So I really feel as a teacher, one of the greatest hurdle a teacher faces is whether he is teaching to a student who has interest of his own to learn that subject, or he has joined the course because of he has been suggested to go and join in a particular course. So which is one of the major hurdle for a teacher to identify. If a student has an intrinsic motivation to learn something, then the task of teacher would have been easier. But if the student has joined just because he need to get a positive regard from his parents, then the problem of teacher multiplies. It will take a lot of time, because he has to inculcate. There need to lot of strategies for him, because when the student is not. That is the reason why psychologists always try to talk about, don't join your children in a course which you could not become. Just identify what he is interested. So one of the most important first step in engagement is to know the aptitude of the child, whether he want to be in a science stream, whether he want to be in a art stream, or whether he want to be an engineer, whether he want to be a doctor. So you need to go note the aptitude of the child. And today, it doesn't mean that most of the children down the south, our parents down the south, are interested their children to become something, a professional doctor or an engineer. And I tell you, this is one of the most starting point for the problem of not being engaged. Children in a school, they will be reading many subjects. In intermediate, they will come down to few subjects. And finally, when comes, and the many people who have been done well in school and moderately well in intermediate colleges have failed in their professional courses. That is because of lack of aptitude, lack of a teacher faces, especially in professional colleges, whether he is teaching to a student who is interested in the course or not. Then how to, as a psychologist, how to try to inculcate the interest. This is a major challenge for the teacher in the classroom, especially when you want to see that he has to engage. And here we have many methods where psychologists have been taken, and where we have to, first, after engaging the student interest, somewhere the teacher has to go for a ice-breaking method. He has to break the ice, and he has started discussion. And he need to integrate, and very important thing, and he need to allow the students to work on activities where he uses his analytical skills, creative skills, evaluating skills, etc. And only when he tries to, especially creativity skills is one of the best things where you can engage a children. And in the process of this creativity, for example, I tell you, when I want to talk about creativity, I can just ask him a question saying, please tell me what are the unusual ways of using a chalk piece in the classroom. Unusual way which have not been used. Now he starts trying to crack his brain, and he try to come out many answers which are still part of your regular usage of the chalk piece. But still we have to tell him that no, it is not. You think the other way. So inculcating creativity in students is will one way try to engage him actively in the classroom. So then, as Professor Ramon Rao said, and even Professor Shah was saying, where we need to have a social and emotional learning curriculum. Many times we are just learning because we will be accepted by our parents, because after all, we human beings are basically in the process of socialization. We just want to please the people of our concern. It may be our parents, it may be teachers. We should not learn just because I want to please my father, I want to please my teacher. I should feel that this is going to improve my social status, or it will improve my emotional balance. And the curriculum should also try to talk about the socially relevant and emotionally important issues in the curriculum. And this is a very important thing which will certainly inculcate the interest in students to have engagement, and he will be more engaged in it. So here, they should be given a freedom, or they should be given away with the type of grading system. And grading system is one of the things which will allow them to read, mug up, and do things. And when you are not at all concerned about grading system, giving up a grading system would go a long way the child to diversify his theory, because new education policy has been emphasizing on the very important aspect of trying to broaden the knowledge base of the student, where they can learn from different things. And I tell you, they have been given a wide choice to select different courses in their graduation or post-graduation courses, which self-indicate that here, narrowing down to you as a science stream, probably you may not trying to finally get into the society because your knowledge is more bookish, but you doesn't have knowledge which will help you to survive in the society. So if you want to make him use his thing, hands-on experience is a very important thing, and where the students will have a cooperative type of learning. I tell you, cooperative type of learning is a very important aspect, because here you try to share your ideas. Share your ideas. We have an experiment called as zigzag puzzle experiment, where when we ask the students to write an essay about a particular topic, we don't give them the material, all full material to everybody. We give only part of the material. So if they want to really write well, they have to cooperate with the other students. And this cooperative learning, where we sit together, discuss together, have common ideas. Even in the classroom, the teacher should not talk to students just to talk about their own answer. They should be with other friends and see that they give a free answer, which is devoid of anything. Let them express themselves freely, what they really feel, and let them come with a common answer for all of us. And such type of learning would certainly, probably I personally feel, will make the student engage himself, develop interest in his coursework and things. Apart from this, smaller things which every psychologist we try to have a goal, we try to have a teamwork. We should give the students material which create a prototypes. These are all certain a game, a role play, trying to give them a role play and express themselves in their own way. Above all these things, we should also give them a time limit. And this time limit is also very important, because if you don't give time limit, probably sometimes students reaction. And we should also try to provide them a role model and ask them to play a role in the classroom, so that they will be able to coordinate with them, which will develop interpersonal relationships. I tell you, this knowledge always increases by sharing. Knowledge will never increase just to have with yourself. When we try to share with our friends, when we try to share and when they share with it, certainly the ideas on which we impinge upon will improve, and certainly it will help you.
Now, going with the introductory remarks of the panelists, maybe I pose a question to both of you. Maybe to start with Professor Ram Mohan Rao sir, that what are the challenges the teachers face in engaging the students in virtual classes? Because now maybe thanks to pandemic, we have hybrid mode of learning. There is virtual learning as well as there is activity based learning, or maybe offline learning and all. Now, what are the challenges the teachers face while engaging a class in virtual mode?
Really, we have had different kind of experiences. So, the virtual mode teaching learning process is not uncommon in West, but the pandemic made the Indian institutions to jump into it without adequate preparation. That made lot of problems, that created lot of problems, lot of challenges into it. In fact, the way in which the teaching learning process should happen is different from the online class type of mode and offline class of type of mode. So, that difference, if the teachers really adopt it, then you can make, even through online teaching, the students are fully engaged. So, when the eye to eye contact is there, not there, when the classroom environment is not there, peer presence is not there, the teacher body language fully not visible, in such cases some distractions may happen to the student, and the environment in which the student is placed is not known to the teacher, and the environment in which student is placed is not controllable to the student also, controllable to the teacher also. So, these are the environmental factors that influence it, but if right kind of the methodologies, teaching methodologies is evolved, I think you can address the problem very easily. So, challenge is only that teachers are not really prepared to get into the online teaching learning process. When they are adequately trained and prepared, it is equally effective to make the students engaged for the purpose.
Yes, sir. We are caught unaware, we are caught off guard, because we are not prepared for online teaching. So, that will be the major challenge. So, Professor Srikanth Reddy, maybe what are your experiences with reference to this virtual classroom teaching and learning, and what are the different challenges that these teachers might face, and what could be the real time solution for these challenges?
Mathew, I just accept what some of the thing, mostly what Professor Ramohan Rao has said, but I could certainly add upon, because one of the thing is most of the students, when I was trying to talk to them virtually, I never used to see them. In the first few classes, I never used to see them visible on the screen, and slowly they were not being able to see, and it was not that interesting, because we were not also prepared and fully equipped for this virtual classroom, and mostly when we were still using the old methods of blackboard and trying to write it on the blackboard, and we could not develop certain modules during the pandemic situation. Probably if we want to go for a blended mode of where the teachers should be trained well how to go ahead with the virtual classes, because I think teachers, even university professors, including me, I can add upon. So I may need little refresher course to how to handle a virtual class. So teachers also are not fully were equipped at that stage. Though we did it, but it was mostly a lecture mode where we did not use any online slides or certain things which can be help the students get some more enthusiasm. Because mostly I myself have been most of the time I have practiced only a lecture method, even an online class. Probably that may be the reason why the students may not have developed that interest, because in a virtual class, probably teacher talking, so they can always go away, just record it and they can hear whenever they want, but they may not participate. But if I am using certain things which have to be only through a video mode and see to read onto the screen and other things, probably students would be present there physically and try to learn. Because when I ask them a question in between, they would answer only after 30 seconds or 40 seconds they would answer. So till then they will be roaming somewhere switching on. That was the problem which I personally faced in it. Probably I don't blame the students exclusively, and even I was myself was not fully equipped with the best ways to deliver through a virtual mode. But virtual mode can be where sometimes we need not even teach. We have a lot of programs in MOOCs, and many programs even APSCHE is now trying to developing their modules for virtual mode, and that methods can also be used for the student to learn better, not only to hear to a teacher lecturing in the online. So I think that could do a better thing by.
Yes, sir. Maybe the
Yeah,
teacher has to be really empowered with different type of activities which he could perform online also.
Because we have a lot of video lessons coming up, and we are also learning. APSCHE is also developing a lot of
Yes, sir.
modules. I think though it would be handy for the children to learn better than just a teacher trying to teach virtual.
Just moving a little ahead of the effective student engagement, there is, I feel that there is a gap between what the students learn within a classroom and when he goes into the real world of work. There is a certain type of gap that is there in this student engagement or classroom environment and then the real world engagement. Professor Ram Mohan Rao garu, how do you envisage this filling up of the gap, if at all, if a gap really exists?
Srirangam garu, we have been discussing all through on this topic, keeping our minds on one side of the issue. If we look at the other side of the issue of the student engagement, if we are unable to make the student engage properly, what happens? Say, student gets engaged whether you make him engaged or not. They take their own time, they have their own activity plan. But when you institution and the family designs an engagement plan, then the student will be pulled to that and makes a learning. So nowadays you could see lot of distractions in the society, lot of say pulling factors because of their age, energy, emotion. So if we do not actively engage them in positive environments, there is a danger that the youth is directed to the negatives, that is going to affect the family life, family system, himself or herself, and also the nation. If the right kind of engagement is not done, then the optimization of the potential of the student also cannot be done. This is a great loss to the country, wherein you have majority of the population belonging to youth category. So that point I wanted to very clearly convey. The second issue that you have mentioned, there is a gap between what is happening in the real world and what is that we are giving emphasis and training to the student within the framework of the teaching learning process or the institutional framework. Yes, we prepare the students for the future. we in the educational institutions just not say transfer the knowledge, we train them to use the knowledge, apply the knowledge to the situations. And unfortunately, maybe because of the gaps that we had over the years in the educational system, the real world situations and the kind of knowledge, experiences, examples that we are giving to the students, there is a huge gap existing. In fact, that is the reason why NEP 2020 became a hot topic throughout the country, and everybody is appreciating, because they have rightly pointed out the kind of gaps between the real world and the practices we are having in the education system. Certainly, there is a need to change, need to improve, dynamically make the system to absorb all the kind of changes and bridge the gap between the real world and the institutions. For that, as rightly mentioned by Srikanth Reddy garu, activity based learning, practical approach, internships, on the job training, then say exposing the students to the society, say these are visualized by Andhra Pradesh State Council of Higher Education. And we have introduced a wonderful changes in the curriculum, wherein we have introduced life skills, skill development programs, skill enhancement programs, along with a 10-month mandatory internship at the graduate programs. And if within the 10 months, 2-month compulsory community service project, the intention is to develop sensibility towards societal problems, sensibility towards relationships, sensibility towards the environment, and the connectivity with the society, what kind of thinking they have to develop, a positive thinking they have to develop towards the people who are not regularly connect with the students. So, that kind of approach, and also the industrial training, Honorable Chief Minister very specifically pointing out that no student should be given a graduation, should be allowed to complete a graduation without having some hands on experience, where the student gets exposed to the real world, exposed to the practices happening, exposed to the culture, system, traditions and the methods of functioning. They cannot have a better life, better career. So, that is being practiced in Andhra Pradesh, and I am sure that with these kind of initiatives, the gap between the real world and the training and knowledge that is being given in the educational institutions will be narrowed down to the maximum extent possible.
Yes, sir. So, there exists a gap between the learning environment and the real world situation, and thanks to the AP State Council of Higher Education for the curricular interventions, which it is making with a conscious effort, like introducing the life skill courses, introducing the 10-month mandatory internship, and involvement of the student into the society through the community service project, as well as through these on the job training and internships. Maybe the gap that is existing between the learning environment and the real world environment will slowly be narrowed down with the conscious efforts of the AP State Council of Higher Education. Sir, Professor Srikanth Reddy garu, you are mentioning a particular phrase of joyful learning. Now, could you just add a few more insights of yours on making the learning more meaningful and joyful?
That's what I was trying to put up on when we talk about joyful learning. Basically, I will be joyful when I learn something in which I am interested. The first thing for joyful learning is whether I am motivated intrinsically or extrinsically. So, joyful learning starts with intrinsic motivation. So, every one of us have certain innate needs, innate motives which are there, which are not related to any monetary, any privileges which we enjoy in the society. So by doing this, I gain pleasure. I gain pleasure. So basically here, one of the things is, if you have joyful learning, I should learn only which gives me a satisfaction, which gives me or tries to satisfy my inner drives. So if I am interested to play cricket, I should be allowed to play cricket. Then I will excel in it. If I just want to use my pen and thing to draw certain figures, I should be allowed. I should be given an artist. If I want to pen down and write something, I should be encouraged. But here, basically, for a joyful learning, the child should be interested in what he does it, and he should feel that he will be satisfied with what he is doing. This is the most prerequisite for a child. That is what I was trying to mention, try to know the aptitude before putting him into a college. In the same way, the teacher should not have a different perception that the child should know everything. Every one of us is unique. So basically, we mostly that society tries to talk about intelligence in related to performance of in math, science, or a professional course. No, intelligence is something which tries to makes you to adjust well in whatever you do. Every one of us doesn't mean that we should have mathematical ability, we should not, we have analytical ability, we should have reasoning ability or verbal ability, language ability or numerical ability. But we may be good in one ability which gives us a recognition. So what is that is interest of the child will try to make him excel. So always a teacher should assure that student or show the student that they do not know everything, but that doesn't matter. Whatever they know is enough. He should create an environment where he unconditionally accepts the child or the student that he knows something in which he can excel. It doesn't mean that we should know everything. I, as a teacher, because we psychologists talk about a general intelligence and a specific intelligence. So general intelligence, we try to talk it as like a fountain, from which fountain water flows and goes in different directions. Normally it goes in a plane and things, and it becomes a stream. In the same way, here, basically, when we talk about this specific intelligence, I may be a mathematician, I may be a physicist, I may be a management, I may be a psychologist, I may be whatever it is. So basically here, this specific intelligence will be depend upon what we become. So we should try to tell the child, our student, that you need not know everything, but if you know something, that is good, excel in it. So that creates that he has some potentiality and he has been recognized for whatever it is. And naturally, in the process, he tries to learn. And another joyful thing is, as we said, we need to give him a role where he will play the role and he will be given a set of material which will improvise upon his already existing knowledge. Likewise, we can always make this culture where he try to learn. Above all this, we can create a sense of competition where we can try to see devoid of disconnect with grades, as I was earlier telling. This all would try to make a child to learn, and when he is emotionally, socially connected with what he is learning. That is has to be taken a very important role. As Professor Rama says, we need to have certain joyful learning where when we have hands-on experiences. So hands-on experiences through a thing. And above thing, one thing which we as an administration can add, we can always try to inculcate, develop a curriculum. So basically, when we try to give them a sense of worthiness, a child would be always joyful in whatever he learns.
Thank you, sir. I understand that maybe when the innate values or innate beliefs of a particular student are satisfied in his learning process, maybe his learning will be more meaningful and joyful.
See, the joy and fun is psychological issue. So, when a student gets over of the anxiety of learning, fear of learning and understanding, and when he promotes over and above it, then comes the joy of learning. So, there is a system which need to take the responsibility of pulling the student, pushing the students from this anxiety, from this low level of confidence to the level of confidence. That is one dimension. Another dimension is how to perceive beauty, how to perceive the real content of it, how to personalize those things, how to perceive the change in himself or herself when something is learned. So, this is also need to be trained, conditioned. It is what we call in psychology the conditioning of the mind, that this is an enjoyable one, where you can experience enjoyment. Say for example, a poet. A poet, when he recites a poem, he tries to take the beauty of the poem because he has the greater input to understand it. And when a student observes that somebody while learning something is taking the joy, the way in which that person could able to take the joy, then the student also tries to take the joy from it. When some other student is struggling to learn, struggling to say recite a poem, leave about understanding, this person also learns how to struggle and come out of the struggle only. So, the kind of learning environment that we design, that we make it, see many kindergarten schools now, they evolved different kind of methodologies of making the students learn many things by playing, by say doing say dancing activity mode,
Yes.
without any formal system of teaching learning process that we have in many schools. So, this is the way, that means we are making the students perceive that kind of learning and take it positively and receive some kind of internal change of learning. That triggers the attitude and also the right kind of perception. So, after all the fun is a perception. So, some people see fun in some activity,
Yes.
other people see something distracting in the same activity. It is how you look at it. That kind of visualization of a situation, we should make the students learn, then they can perceive, they can make the studies joyful and enjoyable.
Yes, sir. Fully agreed with you
sir.
that
I agree with you, sir.
yeah,
I agree
that
with-
anxiety and fear. Most of the students have that particular anxiety and fear in them in the learning process. So, naturally, as you said, sir, unless and he comes out of that particular anxiety and fear of learning, the learning cannot be a joyful one. And also, he needs to have that perception of joyfulness in the learning process. So, maybe I thank Professor Parth Shah in his absence for being with us, and also Professor K. Rama Garu, the Vice Chairman of AP State Council of Higher Education, and Professor V. Srikanth Reddy, the Rector of Sri Venkateswara University, for taking their time out and trying to give the useful insights what they have gained with all their years of experience to all the viewers. So, thank you once again, sir, on behalf of myself as well as on behalf of AP State Council of Higher Education. I profusely thank Professor Parth Shah, Professor K. Ram Mohan Rao and Professor V. Srikanth Reddy. Thank you very much, sir.